Okay, folks, it is time to make the cover and then the binding. So we're going to start with the cover. You will need 3 chipboard pieces, 2 that measure 11 by 8.5, and then your spine piece will be 4.25 by 8.5. So get those cut there. It's like a medium weight chipboard. So get those cut. You'll also want some cardstock. This is where you need the 12 by 12 cardstock because these pieces will be 12 by 10, so you need 2 of those. And one that is 5.25 by 9.5 inches. And then you'll also need 2 long Tyvek strips that I cut from an envelope. If you don't have Tyvek, you can use duct tape, or you can use some kind of thin material that doesn't easily rip. Okay, so even if you cut it from a thin, there's bags that you can buy that are of a non-rippable material, so you could cut it out of something like that, or you could even use a heavy fabric. Even that could work. Alright, so get those all cut out, and what we're going to do first is put the chipboard onto these cardstock pieces. So I've already got some Tyvek on the back of my pieces. So I'm going to lay those down onto the cardstock, and we're going to wrap each piece. So a lot of people do their covers so that they wrap the entire thing all at once. You can do that as well. I do mine separately, but feel free to do it all together. So what you would do in that case is to kind of adhere your cardstock all together and then lay your chipboard down on it and wrap it all at the same time. I do have a video, a couple of my 6x6 videos on YouTube have it wrapped that way. Okay, now ideally you'd want to have 1 inch on all sides, but because my covers were 11 and the biggest sheet that you can get is 12, so I kind of just went with a 1/2 inch. The top and the bottom have a little bit more, but for the most part it's 1/2 inch around. Okay, and then the third one. If you'd prefer, you could also use a wet adhesive. You don't have to use score tape. Just make sure that the wet adhesive is dry before you continue on to the next steps. Alright, so once you have the chipboard onto the cardstock, we are going to add some score tape all the way around the edges of the cardstock. And then once you have the score tape on all four sides, we're going to miter the corners a little bit. Okay, so we're just going to take a little bit off the corners. You want to make sure that you leave just a little bit at the edge, just like a tiny bit. Don't go right up to the chipboard, leave a tiny space. And I'm doing the in at an angle, out at an angle like we do on the pockets. Okay, and then get these out of the way. And now we're going to kind of move your piece, like kind of fold it like this so it kind of trains itself to go where you want it to go. It's kind of doing a little bit of a pre-fold. And then take the score tape off, or the score tape backing off. And fold it over. And use your bone folder to really press it down. And now in each of the corners, just so it doesn't create a point, you want to kind of push, take a pair of scissors or something and kind of just push in that little little edge bit. Here, I'll show you on one of them how it looks. Okay, so on this corner, I pushed in the little edge. On this corner, I did not. Do you see how there's that little pokey part sticking out? There's that little point. So always push in your edges before you do the opposite sides. Okay, so there's one. And the spine. And then push in those tiny little corners. Okay, there's the spine, and now we'll do the other side. Okay, and the very last one. Oh, I cut a little too close to the edge on this one corner. So this is what happens if you cut too close to the edge. Oh, the light in here is just horrible. There's a tiny bit of the chipboard showing on this corner. You can barely see it, but there's a tiny bit showing, and that just means that I cut a little bit too close to the corner. Alright, so now we've got our pieces are going to lay like this. Alright, so take our Tyvek strips. I've got adhesive already on the back, score tape already on the back. I'm going to remove the score tape backing. And now I'm going to lay one side onto the Tyvek and then lay the spine on the other side. You want to make sure that you leave at least 1/8 of an inch, because you want to make sure that these can bend up. So make sure you leave a space, and then we're going to bring the Tyvek over and up. Alright, so now those are attached, and we're going to do the same thing on this side. I'm doing a really simple cover for this one. Normally I do like a wraparound cover or something. I decided to just do a simple cover, and I'm going to make the cover itself quite ornate with a lot of metal and stuff like that, so I decided to do a simple cover for this one. Okay, so make sure it's straight. I think my Tyvek strips are 1.5 inches wide. So they can be 1.5 inches, 2 inches, somewhere around there, as long as they cover, as long as they're minimum 1/2 inch on either side. A little bit more would be preferable. Okay, so there is your simple cover. Easy peasy. Alright, let's set that aside for now, and then we will work on the binding. So for the binding, you're going to need a piece of cardstock measuring 12 by 7.5 inches. And then if you are using Tyvek, if you have Tyvek, I highly recommend it for this part. Cut a piece about the same size in the Tyvek. And then you will need one piece of chipboard that is 4 inches by 8.25, and we're going to put that against the back side of our binding, because we're going to have some tines and things we need to cover. And then another piece of cardstock, I think I said chipboard, cardstock, that is 3 7/8 by 7.5. Alright, so, oh, this one is going on the back of the smaller one is going on the back of the binding system. This one will be going on the actual chipboard spine piece itself to make it all black and add a little extra security. Okay, so those are the pieces you need. Grab your scoreboard. We are going to score the binding system. Okay, so put it on the 12-inch side, and we are going to score at 1, 2.5, 4, 8, 9.5, and 11. Okay, so again, that's 1, 2.5, 4, 8, 9.5, 11. And then we're going to flip it over. Score lines are still in the same spots, just showing the mountain side. And we are going to score again at 1 3/4, 3 1/4, 8 3/4, 10 1/4. Okay, so those measurements again: 1 3/4, 3 1/4, 8 3/4, 10 1/4. Okay, so you can put your scoring board away again. And now we are going to cover this with the Tyvek. So you want to cover it on the side that we just scored. Okay, so the one with the 1 3/4, 3 1/4, etc. So that's the side that you want the Tyvek to go on. Okay, and that way you won't see it. So I'm going to remove all my backing. Because this is what's going to keep the whole album, you know, together, and so that the pages lay flat. And so you really want this to be strong. Well, I mean, you want everything to be strong. But this is one of those things that the expandable binding system, they can rip over, you know, when you're using it and showing people over and over and over again. So this will help ensure that it does not rip. Alright, now we are going to fold and crease all of those score lines. You're going to want to really crease them, because now that we've got that Tyvek on there, it's going to be a little thicker. So it's going to fold kind of like an accordion, the way our page 8 did. Okay, so that is going to be our binding system. It's going to sit right It's going to sit right in here, right on the spine, and then the pages are going to sit on top of that. So let's get our pages, put all of this aside for a second, and we will put our pages together. Okay, so here they all are. Okay, so the pages are going to work like this. You've got the 3/4 inch section of this page, and it is going to attach to the 3/4 inch section of the next page. And they're all going to go page to page to page. Alright, so, sorry, my phone's going off. I'm going to use red line tape for this just because it's really tacky, and it stays really well. You just use score tape as well, that will also work. So I'm just going to put a couple lines of this adhesive onto the 3/4 inch section. Make sure it's really on there. Okay, now if you are using red line tape, because it's so tacky, you're probably only going to get one chance at this. It's, trust me, I've tried pulling things back up after using red line tape. It doesn't work. It's, well, you might get lucky, it might work for you, but I haven't had very good luck with it. I've just had frustration if I've messed it up. Okay, so you've got, make sure the other side is out of the way. So we are working with page 2 and 3. So the left side flap of page 3 is going on to the right side flap of page 2. Now make sure you do not go over top of the actual score lines, because you want to make sure that everything can still bend properly. Okay, so there we go. So now page 2 and 3 are nicely together. Now flip it over. We're going to put some red line tape on the other side and attach the next page to it. And we're just going to keep going in that way until they're all together. Make sure you don't have any adhesive going over the ends. Okay. Oh, I've got a little bit of Tyvek here that I want to cut off so you can't see it. Apologies if you can hear my stomach grumbling. I have not yet had breakfast, and apparently my belly is yelling at me. Okay, so okay, so there's your next one. Oh, I've got a zuri hair. Okay, attaching the last page together. All right. Oh, and also make sure all of your pages are the right side up. I have in the past put a page on upside down. Oh, that was a nightmare. Okay, the next step is to put red line tape or whatever adhesive you prefer all over the back side of the pages, and then we're going to attach them onto our binding system. I'm just going to do the rest of this off camera, because you don't need me to hold your hand for this part. You're just putting something tacky on the back of your pages. Alright, so I'll be right back. Okay, so once you have your red line tape all over the back of your pages, we're going to remove the backing from the red line tape and put the binding on. So I'm just going to take part of it off and do this kind of slowly. So make sure you've got your pages nice and tight together. Apologies if my head gets in the way. I'm going to try to do it so it doesn't. And we're just going to put this on the edge. Oh, I think my head already got in the way. I might actually put an elastic around my pages. Okay, there we go. Now they're nice and snug together. Okay, and now we can finish removing the rest of the tape backing. Kind of continue to put this down as we go. Okay. So now our binding system is on our pages. We can take this elastic off. And now we are going to, already got some red line tape on just these last sections. The rest of it is all clear of adhesive. Just the last two that are going to sit flat against the binding. I don't know if you can see that. There we go. Okay, so now I'm going to take the backing off these and then put it into our album. The other side. Okay, bring in your cover. These all out of the way. Okay, so now hold it so that these are flat, and it's again a tight squeeze, so make sure that you've got it right the first time. There's going to be about a ½ inch on both the top and the bottom, and don't worry if there's a little bit of the chipboard showing, because we're going to cover it afterwards. Just make sure it's all straight. Alright, and now your pages are in your album. Okay, so our next step is to, I'm going to put some paper in between each of these pages, and then we're going to punch holes and put brads in them. So I'm going to put the paper there first, and I'll be right back. Okay, so once we've got our pages into our album like this, we need to, well, we don't have to, you don't have to do this, but this is something that I feel is important. I punch holes, so I take my crocodile. If you don't have a crocodile, just use a hole punch, or just punch a hole through it somehow, even scissors. And I go down 1 inch in between each of the pages and punch a hole, and then I put a brad. So I've done, let's see if I can lift it up to show you. Okay, so in between each there's a brad there, so I've punched a hole and put a brad through each of the pages. So I've done it on the top. Now I'm going to flip the entire album over, and I'm going to do the same thing on the bottom. So there's one brad on the top, one brad on the bottom for each page, including this little extra bit at the front. Alright, so I'm just going in here and punching a hole in between each of the pages. Oh, that one was a little bit off center. Well, it's alright. Okay, so I've got a hole in between each of the pages. I might try and get this one. No, I'm going to leave it. I was going to try and make it more center, but I don't know if I can, and it might just make the hole too big. Okay, so then grab some brads. What did I do with them? Okay, and then I'm going to put a brad in each one of those holes. So this is just ensuring that you've got adhesive and you've got these brads holding the pages themselves to the binding system. So it's just a little extra insurance, I suppose you could call it, just to make sure that you know everything's going to stay where you put it. Because you want this to last for years and years and years and years. So you want to make sure that it's put together as well as you possibly can. Okay, one more. Okay, so now we've got brads in between each page on both the top and the bottom of the page. And now we have all of these tines on the inside. Can I lift it up to show you? So there's, oh, you can't really see them, but see all those tines at the top and the bottom? So we want to cover those up because we don't want them to come out. So that is why we have, this is our 3 7/8 by, what was it, 4 and 3 7/8 by 7.5. So that is going to slide down in to cover those brads. I might trim it just a tiny bit. You want to make sure that it's snug, but that you can actually get it down in there to cover things. So test it first. If it's a little bit too snug, then trim it down. There we go. Okay, so kind of test it. There we go, that slides in better. All right, so let's see where I'm sliding it. So we're gonna put that in now. Okay, so slide it in, but make sure it doesn't adhere until you want it to adhere. Make sure it goes all the way down first. And then kind of run your hand down there to make sure it's really adhered well. And now all those tines are covered. Okay, and now grab the other piece of cardstock you had cut for this, the 8 1/4 by 4. We're gonna slide that down in here first and then put the brads in. And mine, again, is a tiny bit too big. I don't know what I was doing when I was cutting these. Cut each of them a little bit too big. There we go. Okay, so dry fit it, make sure it's gonna work. And okay, perfect. And then take your backing off. If you prefer, I'm just using black cardstock. You could put a piece of patterned paper here if you prefer, or you could do both the black cardstock and then pattern paper over top, like completely your choice. This is, you won't really see this. This is going to be only seen sometimes as the pages are moving, but you won't really see it. So, but your call. All right, so put that down in there. Awesome. And then punch the holes. Okay, now put the brads in. Okay, so there are the two at the top. Now, or sorry, I guess those ones are at the bottom right now. Now we're gonna flip it over and do that again at the top. So punching 2 holes. And then 2 brads. And then we're going to put some score tape over those brads and then put our pattern paper on the spine. Okay. Okay, so I'm just going to cover up these brads and then put the pattern paper on my spine piece. So I'm just using a kind of a tealy, kind of vintagey, grunge-looking piece of paper for the spine. I believe it was in the Ice Cave collection. Okay, and then I'm going to take the backing off this piece. Okay, fantastic. So put this on. Okay, and then on the front, I've got one of the pieces from the Adventure Emporium collection from Ella and Viv, and on the back I've just got a brown piece of paper just that was in my stash, just plain cardstock. And now I'm going to, I haven't put any paper on the front inside covers yet, okay, because I want to do our closure first. So what I'm going to do, please feel free to do whatever it is you want to do, because we don't have to, it doesn't have to be the same. I am going to use this clasp. Now, I've had this vintage clasp. It was actually gifted to me from my aunt who did leather work back in the 60s. So it's like old. So please don't ask me where to find them because I have no idea. Probably eBay. You can find everything on eBay. So I'm going to put one side of the clasp on the front here, and then the other side is going to wrap around to the back and hook on here somewhere. Okay, so that's going to be my closure. But again, you don't have to do that. You can put on whatever you desire. I've shown in other tutorials different different ways of like different closures, and there's so many options. So if you don't want to add a clasp like this, then you can either go to one of my other free tutorials on YouTube for other closure ideas. I've got a few. Or there's other tutorials of mine that you can purchase that can give you ideas. So many options, for real. They're just endless. Well, maybe not endless. There's probably an end, but okay, so I didn't measure that exactly. I'm feeling like maybe it's not completely centered, and I feel like maybe I should measure in this instance. So 8.5. Okay, so I think I'm just slightly off. So 4.25 is dead center. Yeah, so this is just, oh, I was really close though. I was only off a tiny, tiny bit. But I'm glad I measured it. Okay, so because my crocodile will not reach in as far as I want this to go, I'm just going to use the sharp end of a pair of scissors to punch a hole through my chipboard. Oh goodness. This is very strong chipboard. Let's see if I can find a different pair of scissors that might work better. Let's see if these will work better. Okay, there we go. Alright, so I'm just going to attach this with a couple brads. I wish I had something stronger than the brads, but I don't. So this is going to have to do. Okay, I'm going to use some wet adhesive. I'm using my Tombow liquid mono glue, and I'm going to hope that it kind of does the trick. Give me a little extra stability there. Okay, and then I'm going to put my brad in. And I'm going to put the other one in at the same time. Oh, shoot. Should have made my hole bigger while I was at it. Okay. Just opening the tines on the back. Alright, so now it is both glued. And where's my other piece? Just want to make sure this is going to... Okay, that should work all right. Just have to slide it under. Okay, so that is on the front, and then I'm just going to attach it actually and then see how much room I need on the back. Okay, so I want it to be about there. Somewhere around there, so I'm going to cut some of this off. Okay, so I'm just going to punch a couple holes in the back now. I wish they would create a crocodile that somehow managed to make holes that were, you know, that could go further in than an inch, because most of the holes that I make need a lot further than an inch to go in, and it's really frustrating. Okay, I'm going to add a little bit of glue as well to the back of this piece, just in about an inch or so, just to give it some extra stability, and then line up the holes and put my brads in. Oh, I'm going to have to undo it from the front though first. Okay, so there's one. And then the other one. Oh, come on. Okay, so there's the back. So I've got my piece on the back there, and then it comes around and slides under that and hooks, and then it's a little bit loose, so as you add things to the papers to the album, pictures to the album, it'll still work. So now let's remove that so we can add our pattern paper on the inside. So let's cover these with some score tape. And then put our piece of pattern paper on the front here. So I've decided to use the clocks from the why do I keep forgetting what the name of this is? From the Stamperia Voyages Fantastique, that's what it is. I'm not entirely sure I like it, but I might add some more brown bits to it or something to make it a little bit more, work a little better. But I really want to use it somewhere because I love it, and so I'm just doing it. I'm using it. That's what's happening. This is why I tell you not to fall, or not I don't tell you not to, but sometimes following me with my paper decisions, because I change my mind a million times, and I'm really indecisive about the whole pattern paper scenario. It takes me a long time to figure out what papers I really want to use. Okay, so let's put this down. Oh, I almost put it on upside down. Whew, close one. Okay, fantastic. There's the front, and then on the back I am going to use this piece also from the Voyage Fantastique collection, and I'm going to add some more bits and bobs to it as well to kind of funk it up. So I know I used a lot of different paper collections in this project. Some people love that, and then there's other times where I'll use just one collection, like a lot of them from Graphic 45. If you want to let me know which way you prefer, and I'll kind of go a little bit more that direction, because I like switching it up and seeing if I can make collections from different people work together, but that also means that you have to find all those different papers if you want to follow along. So I never know which way I should go on things. I do have one more album planned with a variety of papers. However, they're almost all from the same Etsy designer, so that makes it easier. I think, in fact, I think every one of them is from the same designer, so you'd only have to go to one shop, so that would make it easier. That might be the next album. Alright, guess what, folks? You have just created a beautiful steampunk album. Whoop whoop! Oh, that one's not staying closed. I'm gonna have to maybe add something to that. I don't know. And then that one. Awesome. I really hope that you enjoyed making this with me. I'm going to have more things coming very soon. But for now, yay, steampunk! So you just have to add some things to your pockets. I didn't show you putting the tags in, so put some tags in your pockets and embellish any other way that you would like to embellish it. And hooray! You did it! You guys are awesome. Huge hugs to you, and until the next tutorial, bye bye. Meow.